And we're doing What is Prayer. I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but this is tape 199, take 3. Because first take, remember you ran afoul of the camera, and the second take, Al ran afoul of the sound. Do we have the sound? And yes, we do. Okay, so take 3. What is prayer? Huh?
That's a lot.
That's all right. No, that's fine. As they used to say in the old times when we were in the fundamentalist, God wanted it that way. But, you know, I haven't had a lot of good things to say about him either, so, you know. Maybe he ought to get his act straight now. What is prayer? Let's look and see what prayer is in the terms of what we understand. Prayer is earth communicating with heaven. Okay. And that's, I guess, as close to say that's what happens as possible. Now, the problem with this is not easy. In fact, it might be a little more descriptive if we went like this. Okay, that's probably going to be a little better to perceive. Earth communicating to heaven. And we have a situation where many, people see that their prayers do not get answered. You know, and that for the most part, unless there's a coincidence or something, that's what happens. The prayers do not get answered. And the reason that the prayers do not get answered is quite simple. The lower is not capable of touching the higher. It's just impossible. You see what I like to do? I don't believe there's such a thing as a God somewhere that works outside of the laws that are created by God. If there is such a thing as prayer, then there must be a way for the earth to touch heaven, in whatever way you want to call it. Well, it is extremely difficult because the two are on a completely different plane, and the point is, since the two levels are not in contact, they are separated. So, what do you do? Most people will stand up and utter something. Well, you're uttering something down here. If you're zooming in, you're uttering something down here, and you're opening your mouth and saying something, and it's just banging off the ceiling. Where is it going? I mean, it's not going anywhere because the two levels are not scientific. It's like looking at channel 2 on the TV. Just think, if you're looking at channel 2, but you wish you were looking at channel 7. Well, you can pray, you can wish, but no matter what you do, unless you scientifically make contact with channel 7, you're not going to see it. Channel 7 is up here, channel 2 is down here. You're watching channel 2 and saying, I want to see channel 7. Oh God, let me see channel 7. Holy Mary, Mother of God, let me see channel 7. I'll say the rosary, I'll lay hands on the television, I'll do all of these things. But you know what? You never see channel 7 until you do what? Until you adjust the frequency and get there and make contact with it. Then you see channel 7. That's the way it is. And what you're doing there is you're messing around with something called ether. And if you read the Bhagavad Gita, you will find that God dwells right there in ether. And if you understand about the chakras and kundalini, you would say that this is quite an appropriate comparison. We've got to move out of channel 2, which is the duality of our natures, and move up to channel 7. So there's no way. There is no way to get, if we want to say heaven is on channel 7 and earth is on channel 2, then in order to get to heaven, you've got to switch frequency. Okay? That's it. And that is, you have to understand that you are capable of getting from here to there, but it's through your effort. You have to do it. And this is the real problem with religion and Christianity. It places all of the expectation on forces outside. Jesus is going to do it for you. The saints are going to do it for you. God's going to do it for you. So you just... We were talking about this at lunch today, and we were talking about the Simpson thing and all of these things. And basically, in religion is a prime culprit in this, because religion does not allow people to look at themselves for what's wrong in here. They never ever turn and say, what's going on in here? They just are told to pray, don't think about it, and pray about it, and the thing rots and gets more fermenting, and all the trouble starts. So they say, well, Jesus will take care of it for you. The Holy Ghost will take care of it for you. And all of the lunacy is piling up in here until a tragedy occurs. And so that's not right. You have to start looking at yourself and understanding yourself and understanding the way these things work. Everything is scientific. We have a man who has a scientific background. You cannot do anything on this earth without plugging into the laws of science. And that's the way it is. And it doesn't change because you want to call it religion. There is no such word as religion. We made that up. There is no such word as spirit. We made that up. These are all the frequencies, the decibels, and all of these things that are governed by the laws of, I guess, physics. Basically, that's the easiest way to put it. But now, let's take a look at this. Here we are. We're the earth. We want to get to heaven. And so what are the instructions? Well, I don't have it. Now, we've covered the Bhagavad Gita of Krishna. We've covered Buddhism. We've covered, in some way, the Sufi Muslims. We've covered, but the basic, since we're a Western-oriented people, is the Bible. That's the document that we really look at closest. And, of course, our guru, and I have no problem in describing him as that, is Yeshua, who you know more affectionately from the Western version as Jesus. That's the name that he was given by your Western groups who can't deal with Jewish names. But anyhow, if we want to use the real name, so our guru is Yeshua. Now he gives us specific instructions as to what must we do. How can we get from here to there? What do we have to understand in this problem? If we're standing in Forked River, most of the people here that go to church believe, and for instance, in this particular town, that they're standing in Forked River, that they've got to say prayers that go to some planet. Go to out into the cosmos somewhere. Their prayers have got to be heard on Pluto or wherever it is. Their prayers have got to reach some far distant planet in order to be heard. But let's look at this from a scientific and a logical, realistic standpoint. And if we plug into Yeshua, the Christ, it's very easy because it's very simple. Let's see what his instructions are. First of all, let's identify, the earth and heaven. Let's go to page 853 in those little Bibles, which will take you to Luke chapter 17. Many of you who stay with me have heard this before. But anyhow, Luke chapter 17, and let's look at the words of Jesus Christ. And he says in Luke chapter 17, verse 21, "Neither shall they say, lo, it's here, or lo, it's there. For behold, the kingdom of God is within you." That is a tremendous statement, because now Yeshua the Christ has specifically identified the location of this thing. So this is in you. So now we can take it out of a geographic thing. We're not looking any longer at Forked River as opposed to some planet somewhere. We're looking and saying, okay, here I am. All right, there's my, it's inside of me. We can take, we take it out of the fact of a cosmic location way off somewhere in space, because Yeshua the Christ has just said, it's in you. Wow, that makes it then a lot more attractive. So then if we want to pray, where do we have to, what will be our target? Our target is within our very own mind, because there is a heaven that is up, there is an earth that is down, and in order to reach from the earth to heaven, in other words, in order to get a prayer through, we have to first realize something if we're going to trust Yeshua the Christ, and that is, heaven is in you. That's good. That's a start. Okay. That's rule one. We understand that. We believe him. He's our guru. Heaven is in us. Now, what do we do about it? So now, because we still need to get the prayer through to heaven, we now know that it's not up in space somewhere. It's not outside of us. It's inside of us. What do? Take a look at page 782 in the little Bibles. You look at Matthew, and you're at chapter 6 and verse 33. And therefore, Jesus Christ says, seek first the kingdom of God. The first thing you have to do is you've got to look for something that is within you. You've got to seek for that kingdom. You've got to look for that kingdom, but you've got to look within yourself because he's just identified for us where it is. Before, you had the whole universe to look in. It could have been up on a planet somewhere. It could be in a black hole. It could be in another galaxy. It could be out at the far reaches of space. And Yeshua the Christ says, no, it's not there. It's within you. And what you need to do in order to get through is start looking for it. So you've got to start looking within yourself. And the only vehicle known to man that allows you to look within yourself is that word called meditation. That's it. If you want to be faithful to Yeshua the Christ, he's just told you you've got to look inside of yourself for the kingdom, and the only way that you can look inside of yourself is meditation. So in that short span, we've covered a lot. We've brought down the location of the kingdom of heaven from out in space and this magnificent and unfathomable galaxies and universe, and we've brought it down to a point between our ears, inside of our head. And then we've told that we've got to look inside of ourselves. So Yeshua the Christ says meditation is the way that you start approaching this thing called heaven. Okay? So, in other words, the Bible says faith without works is dead. Unless you do this, forget it. Just forget it. And you know something? This is the one instruction. This is the basic instruction of Yeshua the Christ, that you must look inside yourself. And this is the one instruction that you'll never get from a Christian church. Do not. In fact, they say do not do that because there's devils in there. That's his basic. This is the thing he said you've got to do first. Look inside of yourself. And that's the thing they say you don't want to do. So where do you start? But I will start with him. I'll stay with him, and that's why I reject Christianity as a religion and accept Yeshua as the Christ, because he's right on the money. You've got to look inside of yourself, and that is the point, that you have to do something. And that's what you have to do. And so that means you have to set aside meditation time and make this effort to look inside of yourself through meditation. So you got to understand definitions. Okay? The higher level that you've got to touch is within us and called the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. There's a beautiful word for it in Buddhism that Shakyamuni Buddha coined, and he calls it nirvana. I like it. It's a very feminine, very beautiful word. But that's what Buddha calls the kingdom of heaven. But it's the same place. It's that point inside of you where you will reach and prayers are answered and all of that kind of business. That's nirvana. It's what this basically is now. Because you're going to get caught up in religious terms and in spiritual terms, this is not anything religious at all. It's just a decibel level. It's a place of the electromagnetic aspect of the brain where if you stimulate it, things will start to happen. It's like a little switch here. Let's just say there's a little like wall switch here, okay? And what's being said by the Christ is if you flip that switch, then you'll start hearing, you'll start understanding, you'll start feeling differently about yourself, you'll start feeling differently about others, you'll start seeing things differently, and all of these things will happen because you will trigger an electrical response within inside of you. It's the same way for those who work on computers. You know what you have to do to get into a certain program. It doesn't make any difference how much you desire to get into the program. It doesn't make any difference how much you pray to get into the program. It doesn't make any difference how much you wish or how many books. Unless you flip the switch or push the button, you're not going to get into the program. Your mind is a computer, and you've got to get into the program. And so how do you get into the program? The man just told you. You've got to look within yourself. You'll discover where the switch is. You flip the switch. All of this is done in meditation. The switch throws open this side, and the electrical impulses start coming through the brain that direct you into these new ideals and new loves and new things as a human being, the consciousness. Okay. So the higher level is called heaven, and this is where the decibels are, the switch that you have to throw. This part here, we know where the switch is, and we throw it, and it usually short circuits or causes a fire or overheats or whatever it does, but that's the switch down there. The two are separate. Okay? Now, prayer is simply a word. There is no such thing. Okay? There is no such thing. Generally, what it is in religious circles is prayer is stuff you say with your mouth. What's ridiculous? I mean, it's just a bunch of flapping and you're just waving in the wind. On the other hand, prayer, as it is defined in a proper sense, is a movement of energy that sends a cycle or a pattern searching for this switch. It's you know, and as this energy starts searching for this switch, the more you do it, the easier it becomes to move that energy until finally you get directive and you touch that switch and bingo, you open. So that's what prayer is. Prayer is actually not asking for some God who exists in some planet somewhere to do something for you, as if there was some God that, you know, wasn't going to, you know, we have such, it's so bizarre. The more you think of religion, we honestly believe that there is some God sitting up there, and unless we turn him on with some kind of thing, you know, he's not going to give you the car or the job or some bizarre thing like this. And now we're learning there's a much more deeper scientific approach, okay? Let's look at it this way. Let's say, for instance, we go to the airport. There's a little airport over here in Bayville. Let's say we walk on the airport because we want to fly a plane. I don't know what your experiences are in here. I know myself, if I walk into that airport, I can get into the plane and that's the end of it. There is no way that I'm going to be able to get from here to there. How come? Because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. And when you talk about prayer, it's the same thing as getting into a plane. You want to raise yourself from the earth up into the sky, up into the heaven. You want to go from this stage of your consciousness to that stage of your consciousness. But 99 and 9/10% of the people don't know how to do it. It's as if you sat in an airplane. What would you do? I don't know. And here, so they sit in here. We're gonna sit in here, and we're gonna pray, and we're gonna get to heaven. But they don't know how to do it. So you know, if you don't know, you can't go. And that's why preaching is so necessary as far as the teaching is concerned, to show people how to do this and what's happening as you do that, okay? We always thought prayer was easy because all you ever did was say, oh God, if you give me this, I'll never do this scuzzy thing again, you know, and that's basically what was the prayer. And then after you got what you wanted and you did the scuzzy thing again, you come back and said, this time I really mean it. If you'll just, I really never will do this again. But then you went ahead and you got that, and then you forgot about it. And you just went, because, you know, it's who you're talking to other than, you know, cuckoos. I mean, who's listening to this kind of stuff? But, you know, this is what we've been raised on, and, you know, I guess that's why everything is really so screwed up. Direct contact, however, is not easy. And let's just go back to it. The only way that you're going to get prayer or that you're going to get to heaven is by raising your own level. You've got to do it, okay? Because if the lower level and the higher level remain far apart, well, that's the end of it. There's no way you're going to get through. There are parables, there are symbolic stories in the Bible, and many of them describe what you have to do. And this is what it is. And the word is used, and this is what is told in the scriptures. If you want to get from here to there, you've got to be persistent. You've got to be persistent. You know what a lot of people like to do is like going out to Oklahoma to drill for oil. They want to put the drill in, turn it 2 times, and strike oil. If they don't, they walk out. I didn't get anything out of that. How deep do you have to dig into the earth to hit oil? Deep! I mean, you got to dig pretty deep to hit water in most places. But this is it. So what do you have to do if you want to hit oil? There are people that are so persistent, they drill for years and years, and they never hit it. And then one day, boom, the whole thing blows, and you got geysers or gushers. Why? Because they were persistent. Now, the point is, I could say, well, you know, you have to be persistent, but what right do I have to say? What right do I have to say that if you're persistent, you know, there's a possibility that you can get from here to there? Well, Yeshua the Christ, who is my teacher too, tells us this. Go, gee, I didn't mark the page number. Somebody tell me what page Luke 11 is on, okay? So you can find that. Luke chapter 11. What page is that on? 846. Okay, if you look at 846, I want to look at Luke chapter 11. And here is a little parable given to you by Yeshua the Christ. And for those of you who are just jumping on, but I'm tired of using this false name made up by, you know, these, you know, I love Greek dancers and everything, but I mean, you know, to make a Greek name out of this is just silly, and his name is Yeshua, so why don't we just stop the nonsense and use his correct name? Luke chapter 11, and this is a little story he gives, and he says in verse 5, which of you shall have a friend and go to him at midnight and say, friend, loan me 3 loaves? I mean, what's he's saying? You're knocking on the door and say, hey, I need 3 loaves of bread. That number 3, however, is not there for no purpose at all. That means something good is going to happen, okay? And then you say, a friend of mine is on a long journey and I don't have any bread for him, so how about it? But from within the house in verse 7, you hear, look, don't trouble me. The door's shut. Me and my kids are in bed. I can't get up now. There's nothing I can do about it. But so then Jesus says, but I say to you, though he won't get up and give him because he's his friend, yet because of his importunity, he will rise and give him all that he needs. You know what importunity means? Persistence. Persistence. There's a story. Here's Jesus saying, okay, you asked for this, you want this, you don't get this, you quit. But this guy didn't quit. This guy was persistent. He kept knocking. Hey, get up. No, I'm not going to get up. Get the heck up. Will you shut up? I can't get my kid. Listen, just one. Oh, for God's sakes. And he comes down. Here, take the bread. Take the whole doggone thing. And that's what he's saying. It's just a parabolic way of saying you've got to be persistent. And that means in your meditation, you do it. And you do it again, and you do it again and again and again. It's like knocking on the door and trying to get this guy up. So there is something that you've got to do. You can't strike oil by letting the drill spin around one time. You got to be persistent. And as Jehoshua the Christ said in this story, that guy wasn't going to get up. In other words, he's saying you're not going to see a change in your life because you came and tried to have a meditation and you didn't get it. You've got to be persistent, okay? So persistent is doing over and over and over. In other words, let's get out of the thing of some God sitting somewhere in your head. Look at this thing as an electrical thing. This is an electrical thing. And just take a look, excuse me. Just take a look, for instance, if we're trying to get the prayer, and it's an electrical thing, and we move an energy up there. And we got to come back again and move it, and maybe you get a little higher up there. And then the electrical energy moves a little higher. We're trying to get a circuit up there. This is what's happening. You're trying to raise your energy. You're trying to get the energy stronger. You're trying to get the electrical circuits. Forget religion. Forget spirit. Forget God. You're trying to get an electrical circuit to touch another part of the brain. Okay? And that part of the brain is the part that contains all of these beautiful things which are called sitting at the right hand and all of the things of nature and so forth that we're going to turn on. But you've got to be persistent, because if you're going to come in and you're going to meditate and you generate a little energy and it gets up like that, you can say, well, I didn't get anything. Well, then this is going to dissipate. You've got to start all over again. It's a repetitive process, over and over and over again. Otherwise, if it's anything but that, then we have to think there's a man sitting in here who won't give you what you want until you keep screaming just to aggravate you. It has nothing to do with that. It's talking about a scientific principle of building on that energy, building that energy up stronger and stronger until it finally hits the point, hits the contact, voila, you've made contact, you've completed the circuit. And that's what it is. See, and so it's simply a scientific principle. Okay? And it's being conveyed to you through stories in the Bible. Just like we're doing with Abraham and all of these things in Genesis. There's scientific principles about the operation of the brain and the electric circuitry of the brain being conveyed in stories. It requires constant electrical effort before contact is made. You know, for instance, I mean, anything you do, you know, if it's worthwhile, it takes time. You set a plan in action, and then whether you're building something, whether you're planning something, or whether you're doing something, it takes time before you can make contact. There's another story that points this out, which I think is pretty good, and I, once again, didn't put the thing down, but you're on Luke 11. Go to Luke 18. Luke chapter 18, whatever page that's on, you'll find it, okay? And if you look at Luke chapter 18, here's Jehoshua the Christ telling another story. What is it? Okay, Luke chapter 18. Look at verse 1. He spoke a parable that meant always to pray and not to faint. In other words, keep the effort going. Don't quit, you know. And in this way, we know we're talking about meditation. Okay? And he says, there was in a city a judge which feared not God, neither regarded man. In other words, the guy, he didn't care about anybody. And there was a widow, and she came to him and saying, avenge me of mine adversary, help me out. And he would not for a while, but afterwards he said within himself, I'm not interested in God, and I really don't care about people, but because this widow troubles me, I'll avenge her, I'll take it, lest by her continual coming she wearies me. And then Jehoshua says, and shall God not avenge his own elect, which cry day and night to him, though he bear long with them? In other words, what's being said here in the story about the judge, he could care less. How did she get him to give her what she wanted? She didn't let up on him. She kept coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back. And this is what you're doing. This is what you do in this room. You come back and back. So there's a very, very important part that we've heard from Jehoshua the Christ said, be persistent. Keep doing it. Don't stop. I mean, who else you going to get to tell you how to do this? I mean, you get, there is nobody else that can explain it to you. You have explained to you here, and this is the key. You want to get from the earth, you want to get to heaven. Okay? What is lower is not in contact with what is higher. God is here in the higher part of you, you're here in the lower part of you, and the two are separate. The God part of you and the earth part of you, or the carnal part of you, are separate. See? So, what do you have to do? Let's say, for instance, let's take another. So let's say, for instance, you're in a big department store, or you're in an office building in New York City, and the person you want to see is on the 7th floor. Well, you're going to stand down at the 1st floor and wish that you were there? Oh God, Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, I claim that I'm on the 7th floor. No, you're not. You're on the 1st floor. And you know what? You're going to stay on the 1st floor until what do? You either get on the stairs and climb up, or you get on the elevator. But what happens? You know what? Religion doesn't want you to be able to do anything. Christianity doesn't want you to be able to do anything. Jesus said you've got to do it. They say no, stay on the 1st floor and just claim that you're on the 7th floor. Okay, I'm on the 7th floor. And you were supposed to get your loan and get your $5,000. The guy never shows up. I didn't get it. Well, because you never left the 1st floor. But you claimed it anyhow. See? And so you find out that what have you got to do? You got to climb the stairs. You got to get in an elevator. You got to do it. You want to get to the 7th heaven. You want to get to the 3rd heaven. You want to get to that place within you. Then you've got to do it. And you know what's amazing to me is you can teach this stuff. You can show these people what Jesus said. It doesn't make any difference. Sing the songs, claim this, Jesus is going to do this, and the heck with it. Just forget about yourself. You're nothing but a... It's like Al Vera was talking today about the evangelist or the preacher on television. The earth is no good, you tree huggers and flower sniffers and all this stuff. And it's nothing. God hates it. He's going to blow it up and burn it down. And you know, this is what... This is what, you know, here you got a whole book about creation and all of this, God's most magnificent planet that we know of in the universe, and religious people are the prime ones to say it's a dump. Because where do they want to go? They want to go to another planet. We talk reincarnation. We say, it's true, there is eternal life right here. Oh no, I'm going to another planet. It's like the guy on the 2nd floor. How are you going to get there? How are you going to get there? Well, we realize, obviously, that, you know, you're not going to get there. You're going to stay right here. Jesus or Jehoshua talks of another aspect that can interfere with the lower touching the higher. And when we have vanity, when we have arrogance, we have physical desire, it stops communication. There's a problem that I have a lot of people in the New Age movement. And it's a lot of it is this. You know, it's... Hey, if you wave smoke, or you sit on a rock, or you put a feather in your ear, or you stand on your head in Arizona or something, you're going to fly up? No, you're not. You're not. There's scientific principles. And smoke and feathers and all that stuff aren't going to do it. You have to plug into the same thing. The emotions must be purified. Because the emotions are what holds you down here. I think Rose said that this morning. The emotions are what holds you down here, and you've got to purify them. So how does Jesus say to purify the emotions? Take no thought. It's exactly what happened this morning when the king of Sodom said to Abram, listen, give me the people, you take all of the material. He said, I don't want a thread. In other words, I don't want a thought. I won't take a thought. So there is a need to totally separate. Ouch. There is a need to totally separate from the, for those of you, I have a little sensitive spot there, and on my hand, you know, I'm talking about, and and I hit it. That's all right. But there is a need to totally separate from all religious feelings and traditions. That's the most important part. The most important thing in reaching from here to there if one thing I could say all of this night is get rid of religion. If you can get religion out of your mind, out of your brain, you'll make it. But as long as you're going to dwell in the superstitious insanity, it is. It's a connection between superstitious and stupid. Superstitious. Then you know what do you want to do? What can you? Let's take a look at. Are you at Luke 18? Go to chapter 10. Verse 10. And Jesus was talking about two guys go up to pray. One's a Pharisee and the other is a publican. And the Pharisee said, boy, God, I thank you. I'm not, as these other men are, extortioners, unjust adulterers, or either a scuzzy guy standing next to me. That's what it says in the book. Yeah, here's the publican sitting there, and this other guy says, good God, am I glad that I'm pure and saved instead of this wretch next to me. Look at this guy. What's he doing in here? You know, Brian doesn't even have sneakers, you know. Get rid of him. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of, look at that, I give tithes of all that I possess. But the other guy standing far off wouldn't lift up so much of his eyes, but he smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me. I'll tell you, Jehoshua the Christ said, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. How do you humble yourself? You do not have to lay out in the dirt, or you do not have to pour garbage on your head in order to humble yourself. You humble yourself when you separate from thought. You simply say to yourself, self, it is not me. Self, it is not the mind. Self, it is not my ego. I am giving that up, and I am opening myself to the Christ. I am opening myself to God. The key phrase in that little story is that one that exalts himself shall be humbled. In other words, when you try to raise yourself up to heaven, you're going to be lowered to earth. And that's why a lot of, whether it be in mainline religion and Christianity or the New Age movement, I see a lot of that, and it bothers me, of people with all kinds of gimmicks and all kinds of techniques. You took up the New Age Journal, which has done us a lot of good. But you see advertisements, you can get special glasses with earphones you put on, and it'll take you on a one-way flight to heaven, and all this bizarre stuff, you know. Well, it's not going to work. There's only one way you can do this. There's only one way to fly an airplane. You got to get up to a certain speed, and then it goes. And there's only one way to get to heaven, and that's the way that's been defined in the ancient text. And that's through meditation, a Christ-centered meditation, a God, if you would, centered meditation within yourself, not with all of these gimmicks and all of these this lunacy, because it's just, I'll tell you quite frankly, of what I see, whether it be in New Age or the other, it's just a way for people to make a buck. And that's all it is. People making a buck on other people. And this is the beautiful part about this. This doesn't cost 10 cents. It doesn't cost you a penny. All it does is require you to be obedient to Jehoshua the Christ and control yourself in a meditative state. That's all that you're expected to do. So you've got to feel this nothingness in yourself to break the attachment from the earth, and that's what's important to do. Jesus totally closes down on the power and the need for public prayer. It's an interesting thing. Many in the circles of Christianity today are campaigning all over the country to get prayer into public schools. They want prayer in public schools. And they want people to be able to pray in public. Do you know that is 100% contrary to the instructions of Jehoshua the Christ? Absolutely contrary. Everything that this wonderful voice of God told us to do, this religion has said, don't do it. Let me show you if Jehoshua the Christ agrees that we should have prayer in public schools. Go to page 781. And in page 781, this is his description. You're in Matthew chapter 6, and if you look in verse 5, he says, and when you pray, don't be like a hypocrite. Don't be like somebody who wants to stand in a school hall and show how religious they are. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, and you could add in the public schools, that they may be seen of men. Don't be like that. Do you see what he says? Because they've got their reward. And what is their reward? Their own ego. But you, when you pray, enter into your closet, and when you shut your door, pray to your Father which is in secret. And your Father which sees in secret shall reward you openly. Now look, they profess Jesus, and yet they do not and will not ever turn themselves and say, we'll do what he says. Well, we do what he says. You know, it's a funny thing. This one church that's considered the outlaw church is, I think, the only one that obeys Yeshua the Christ. We'll do exactly what he says. And that doesn't mean you build a closet in your house or go into your shoe closet or anything like that. That means you go into yourself, and there in the secret of your own mind, you offer yourself up to that which is the God who dwells within you. And that God who dwells within you will answer you in secret. And then it will manifest to you openly. But how can you justify religious groups saying, get prayer back in public schools, we want to be able to pray, when the leader of the pack said, that's not the way I want you to pray. I want you to pray in secret. Just think about that. Is there anything that he said that they are in agreement to? Hardly. Notice that the Father is in secret. It's total mystical consciousness as taught by Christ. Entering in your chamber means entering within yourself. And I want you to see something, those of you who are here. It's a very mystical thing. That's an ancient Eastern statement for entering within yourself and closing down the thoughts of the mind. Enter the closet and close the door. Not curiously, it is contained in the very same chapter as what else? Matthew 6:22. Look down at that. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, your whole body shall be filled with light. There's a point where Yeshua the Christ talks about the single eye in the same chapter that he talks about entering the closet and close the door. And what else does he talk about in the very same chapter? Go to Matthew 6:25. Right where you are. Take no thought for your life. 6:27, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? A cubit is 18 inches, which is 9. Why take thought for raiment? And all of this business. So here in that same chapter, Yeshua the Christ says, take no thought, practice the single eye, and pray in secret. And practicing the single eye and taking no thought is praying in secret through meditation. That's the instructions of the one that they place on their bumper stickers. I love Jesus. You don't love Jesus because you don't do a doggone thing the man said. You refute and repudiate everything he said to do. And in fact, not only do you refute and repudiate what the man said to do, you turn around and call those people who do obey him and do what he says to do cultists and all kinds of evil names. So those are the instructions as how to transmit from the lower to the higher. How you get from earth to heaven. And who did I quote through the entire time? I did not quote the New Age Journal. I did not quote Carl Jung. I did not quote Buddha or Krishna. I quoted Yeshua the Christ. Okay. Who, you know, if you just tuned in, he has an alias that he's known in Athens by as Jesus. But I mean, in the Holy Land, or whatever you want to call that mess, he was known as Yeshua. So, what you're talking about then, let's put it in its proper way. What you are talking about then is known in other circles as telepathy. Is that how you spell it? You know how to spell it. Telepathy. Mental telepathy. They'll love that one down at the old parish hall. But nonetheless, that's the way it is. Mental telepathy. Getting that thing plugged in and moving it. And what do you ask for? Okay, let's get this all off of here. I'm glad I washed the board off. It got worse. This is it. We wrap this up. Are we okay back there? Okay, this is it. We wrap this up. What do we ask for? That's very important. That's a big question, and I want to make that. And I know I sit and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the man who sits in the front row here, because he's a brilliant man spiritually. He's a brilliant man of science. Teaches me a lot of things. And I know that as a scientist, when he conducted a scientific project, what he was asking for was the truth. What is true? Science is not prejudiced. Science does not say, I'm going to conduct this experiment and I want it to come out like this. Science says, I'm going to conduct this experiment and what comes out will come out, and that'll be the truth. If you were watching recently in the O.J. Simpson case, there was the story of, I forget what they call these people, not pathologists, they're forensic experts, and there was a fellow from China who was hired to go to California, and he was to check to see if he could determine a particular cut on Mr. Simpson as to whether it came from a cut in a glass or was in a fight. And he went back to Connecticut from China, and he spoke in Chinese, and he said, this type of science, the answer has to come true. I cannot be influenced by those who want it to be from the fight. I cannot be influenced by those who want it to be from the cut glass. I can't tell. I cannot tell. So, in other words, this is exactly what he was saying. You have no business asking for anything. You simply have to ask for the truth. What is right for you? What is true for you? What should be? And many times you say, well, I want it this way, and it is not right. And all of the things you can recount in your life, and probably in most instances, we were talking about this at lunch, a lot of stumbling blocks that have made it possible for you to reach this point where you have an opportunity now to really fly on the wings of nirvana. But that's what you ask for. You ask for the truth. You don't try to experiment and make this come out a certain way. And that's what most people would like to do. You know, we see it all the time. You see it all the time on television. And, you know, they say that this person's going to get healed and the guy jumps out of a wheelchair and all of this kind of business because they've got to make this come out instead of simply saying, what is the truth? What is the truth? See? And so what you need to find out in your meditation, and it will come to you, is what is right. What is right for you? What is right for your life? What is right for those in your experience who come around and are part of your life? And so who should be your teacher? I think that we've proved tonight that an excellent teacher in how to pray is Jehoshua the Christ. And Jehoshua the Christ has been very specific. The kingdom of God is within you. You have no place else to look. And the first thing you should do is seek within yourself to find that kingdom. I quote that on the authority of Jehoshua the Christ of the Bible, who's the one who taught that. You should look within yourself. And he said very specifically that as you look within yourself in this meditation, practice the single eye. It is important to practice the single eye. You can concentrate that energy between your eyebrows. It's as ancient as the Hindu religion. That's what Jehoshua the Christ said you should do. He said you should pray in secret. You don't want to get involved in a lot of public praying and things like that. Get within yourself. And the Father who dwells within you, which is the mind that sees this in secret, will reward you. And he says that you should take no thought. Separate from your thoughts. He also has been very specific that you take away the key of knowledge by not entering within yourself. So what better authority to tell you how to get from earth to heaven than Jehoshua? Jesus, if you would, of the Bible. That's the only one we've used as an authority tonight. And those are the things that he taught. The things that the religion that claims to love him says are occult and evil and of the devil are the things that he said are absolutely essential for you to do if you're going to raise yourself from the earth to heaven. What is prayer? That is prayer. Yes, ma'am?
You don't see any difference between prayer and meditation then?
I say meditation is prayer. The question was, do you see any difference between prayer and meditation? Prayer is meditation. Meditation is prayer. I see an absolute futility in mouthing words other than to yourself. And I see there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to get into a situation where you want to use some type of a vocal prayer to instruct yourself or to put yourself at ease or to make yourself feel comfortable, but just be aware of the fact that the only one that's listening to it is you. Once you get to that point, if that gives you peace of mind, there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong if you want to, if you have peace of mind figuring, well, I'll pray to God somewhere. There's nothing wrong. If it makes you feel better, but you're the only one that's going to experience, it's going to make you feel better. That's fine too. If you want to pray for somebody else and use prayers and words, that's fine. But that's not going to change the fact that Jehoshua, Jesus the Christ, said, practice the single eye, take no thought, enter within yourself if you really want to rise and make contact. Because you've been praying all of your life. You've been praying all of your life. You've been praying all of your life, and we still don't know whether we made contact or not. So the point that he's saying is, stop already with all of this stuff and exercise this electrical energy within yourself to touch this thing called heaven and let the doves fly and let the rains of heaven come pouring down upon you and change. The world has been in prayer for 2,000 years and it is in a self-destruct mode. It is in self-destruct. There has been nothing but wars and nothing but cancers and nothing but rapes and nothing but drugs and nothing but violence. And there are churches or temples or synagogues or all of these things on every street corner and preachers and teachers all over the place. And everything is a violent, brutal experience and the most magnificent planet in the world. So then let's change it and start to plugging in and say, this is the way that I'll do it. I will be obedient to Jehoshua, and I will seek within myself, and I will be persistent in my meditation until finally I can make that circuit complete. You can take all the lights in this room, and I'll tell you something. If you got the 2 wires like that, it's going to be black as pitch in here. When you get those 2 wires to touch, the lights are going to go on. You can snip any wire here, and the lights will go out instantly because there's not a contact made. And that's what real prayer is. And I think the best exponent I would give you, and anybody in here who wants to look at it, I'm not going to give it to you, but I would suggest you buy it, is a book called Man Was Not Born to Cry by Joel Goldsmith. And Joel Goldsmith speaks very, very fluently and beautifully about that as prayer. Joel Goldsmith was the first one to bring to my consciousness and to my attention the fact, who in God's name do you think that God is favoring ahead of you? Do you honestly believe that God is giving somebody else something and withholding it for you? What are we doing here? And do we think we can turn them on by performing some kind of tricks? Look at me, I'll put stuff on my head, or I'll sit on smoke or something like this. It's not true. What is God withholding from you that He's given to somebody else? It's ridiculous. How are you going to con Him into, and all we do in religion, we con Him. We con Him. We'll have this holy day. We'll have this special thing. He's going to get all turned on by this. And this is not what Jesus Christ said. Jesus Christ said your prayer is in secret within yourself. Whatever you want to do within yourself, that's fine. That is fine. You want to utter words, and I do. Everybody does. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's a beautiful thing. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we can get to the point where we'll say, let's have a guru. Let's have a leader. I think Jesus, Jehoshua, qualifies tremendously. But the difference between us as followers of Him and the religious as followers of Him is I say we do exactly what He says to do. Okay? We have to do exactly what He says to do. Okay? And so that is the most beautiful aspect of prayer, is entering within yourself and allowing yourself to touch that higher place. Anything else? Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I'll say one other thing.
Come on, let's see so you can be heard, because nobody can hear you.
I just find that even though I'm meditating and I haven't maybe made that connection yet, I find that something must be going on because I get led. When there's something that happens and I really need direction, I get it.
Well, you see, let me tell you something. No, stay right here. Let me tell you why, let's just turn around here. Let me tell you why that's an extremely important thing to say. What you have just described is a point in your life where there is a need to accomplish, do something, go somewhere, and you're feeling this direction coming within yourself. What you have just described is the instinct that pours forth, that God gives to each and every one of the animal kingdom who, I'm going to have a baby, what do? This is what you do. It's getting cold here, where do I go? This is where you go. The direction comes automatically to the animal. We have to plug in. And when you start getting this feeling, it's the same thing. It's that beautiful instructive pattern that comes from the universe that says this is what to do. So I'm very, very happy to hear that. That's extremely, extremely beneficial. And that will come to you and will come to everybody else. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're Jewish or whether you're Italian or whether you're Portuguese or Hindu or Buddhist or Christian. It doesn't make any difference. Just being tuned in will get you that answer.
Yeah, just when you just start to open up, it just opens you up in other ways. And
That's
so
right.
even if you're not feeling that electrical, I just want to give people hope that you'll
Oh,
feel
yeah.
it in other ways.
I don't, and you know what? That's a good point too. Forget about feeling electrical. Forget about it. Just forget about feeling anything. because that's all part of the physical body too. You can feel electrical energies inside of you, but forget about that, because that's the flesh, that's the body. And we want to ride in that place totally separated from that. You don't have to feel any electricity. You just have to be willing to be obedient and hold yourself in this meditative process until I think what you feel is the most important thing to feel, not electrical bumps or anything like that, but you start to feel good, positive direction in your life. That's what counts.
And the other thing you said a couple weeks ago that was really important was, and which I hadn't been doing, was make it your intention that you want to be in the Christ consciousness. That could be the prayer part,
That's
saying,
right. Sure.
you know, this is
This
is what I intend to do, and then that helps
sure.
you.
Because then you're telling your own mind.
Right, right.
We were talking this morning about if a person starts, having sexual thoughts, the body plugs in. If a person gets into fear, the body plugs in. The body sends signals all instantly, depending on your thoughts. So that's what you're saying. You're telling your mind, this is my intent. I'm looking for the
Right.
Christ mind. And so then you set your body up to react and your mind to react to
Right.
that. That's
Yeah.
very good. Thank you. See? Why don't you ask good questions like that? No, I'm teasing. Very good. Thank you very much. That was great. That was very good. And I think too. I wish that a lot of the people from the highways and so forth could be here to hear of our evening spent in going over the instructions of Jehoshua the Christ and being tuned into being total obedience to his instructions.